Hey everyone, I'm going live tonight because I just had a thought and I was thinking about making a reel, but they're too short. And I have a lot of words to say, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a live and let it be spontaneous and, not spend the time editing anything because I think that this message kind of shouldn't be edited in a sense. So I've been thinking a lot about fear and how that translates to our singing and also how it translates to our industry and also the world in general. And it's so easy to allow the fear to win. And on a small scale, we can talk about the fear that we have when we're confronting our vocal challenges in our practice room, right? Even to the big fear of, what's going to happen to me, right? Like we can scale it from little fear all the way to big fear. But in my experience, and also, not just with myself, but also in watching other people, when we deal with fear on a micro level, on the small level, like the level that we can handle in our practice room, the level that we can handle, maybe in an audition or something small, right? This level of fear, when we are conquering that and we are not allowing that fear to overtake us, we're actually conquering fear on a larger scale. And when you think about the negative emotions, the negative energies that kind of pervade our world, fear is really a big one, and it can masquerade as a protective shield, right? And it's so hard to understand how damaging that kind of self-preservation can be. And so when we're faced with this in the studio or we're faced with this in our practice room, we just really have to look at where we are scared, where we are feeling fear. And that can be from a moment like, you're practicing a phrase and you feel in your body that sense of fear before you're going for the high note or before you're, doing a fioritura run or something like this. And you can feel that. And if you're not yet in tune in your body with whether you're feeling that fear and how that manifests, if you're not yet in tune with that, I think that's a first place to start, because you can't conquer fear until you know it's there. So I guess my point in this is I would suggest that everyone get very, very honest with themselves and take the time on your own, speed and your own moment to start confronting the little fears when you are singing. And do this in the privacy of your practice room. Don't do this in your lessons. Don't do this in coachings. Don't do this on auditions yet, right? Until you have some sense of when the fear is coming up and when the fear is manifesting in your singing, and what parts of your body you feel, right? How does your body respond when you start to feel a sense of fear? And maybe you don't even know that it's fear yet. Maybe it just manifests as tension or, oh, I can't do that. Now, if you ever run into a moment like that, where you think, oh, I can't do that well, or I can't do that at all, that is a good sign that's where the fear is. So at that point, you want to look and you want to say, okay, how is my body responding to that moment? What am I doing? If you don't know, video record yourself. Don't look in the mirror, because chances are you're going to miss something because you're going to look away at the critical moment. So be sure you record yourself, because you'll start to see things and you'll say, oh, the fear seems to manifest here. Okay. And then that'll give you a tool to go into the practice room and say, okay, on this part, I tend to exhibit some fear in this area. Now let me tune in to my inner feeling and see if I'm feeling anything at that moment. So we translate the outer world, we translate that into the inner world. And until we can get to this point, we cannot conquer fear. You can't conquer fear until you know that it's there and until you know what it is, okay? And when you can consistently spot what is happening, then and only then will you be able to start to talk to yourself. And you talk to yourself in small ways, right? Whether it's just a command, relax your shoulders. Okay, gentle, or whatever it is, right? You start to talk to yourself in a way that starts to get the body on board with not amping up for a threat response, right? And in this way, you can work very slowly, but you need your own space and you need your time. And this is something that cannot just be done in your lessons. Okay, this has to be done when you are in the privacy of your own space and you can feel your body and your emotions and not have any kind of external external distraction, right? Speaking of distractions. So why I want to say this is because until you do that, until you get to the point where you're conquering fear on this level, you can't conquer it in any other situation. And when we are fearful, and this is going to sound like, I'm putting yet another thing to be worried about, but no, actually it's not. It's just the recognition of what's actually happening. When we are fearful, okay, we are allowing ourselves to be in that vibration of fear. Now, as you know, if you're an opera singer, there's a lot of fear in this industry. There's a lot of fear in the world. I mean, forget it. Don't even look at opera. There's a lot of fear everywhere. But there is a lot of fear in our industry, okay? There's fear on the parts of the producers and the intendants worrying about if, there's even going to be a public for opera to survive. There's singers worried about their livelihoods. There's agents worried about their livelihoods. There's fear on so many levels, right? And, I'm sure you've heard the thing like, don't do this, don't go into this career unless you really love it. And absolutely, that's true. But also, you may really, really love it, and you may be experiencing a lot of blocks. And what is that, right? What is that? You're allowing yourself to get kind of sucked into the vibration of all the fear that's around everywhere. And so, there's this song, and it's played in churches a lot. It's like, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me, right? That's the words to this song. But it's actually true. And so when you're looking at solving these bigger issues in the world or in the opera world or even in your own self, but on a grander scale, maybe in your career, right? Your career trajectory. When you're looking at things like that, you have to first solve the fear on the level of your own soul and how that is manifesting in your singing. Because I will tell you, some brilliant singers have lost their careers because they let the fear overtake them. Something happened, and then another thing happened, and then it just got too much and they couldn't break out of that cycle. And so you'll see them write something like, well, I just decided to step away from singing. But really what happens is the fear compounds and it gets to a place where it's almost impossible to move. So if you notice yourself having that fear and having that, maybe you're already having a career, okay? In fact, I prefer to speak now to those people because obviously if you're not at the part where you're even ready for that step, then, you still have time, you still have things to work out and all of this. But let's say you're having a career and there's still like these stumbling blocks that you hit and you have to get up on stage now and you know that those stumbling blocks are there. So what are you going to do about it, right? You have to be able to face yourself in the mirror and face yourself inside of you and see where you are allowing yourself to give over to that fear, where you are bowing to that fear. And I'm talking in vocal technique right now. I'm really talking on a micro level because there is such thing when we tense our shoulders that is giving into the fear, okay? When we don't allow ourselves to stay focused, but we get a stress response, we are allowing the fear to take over. Now, that's not a blame because we need to know how to back up and not allow that to happen, right? And so if that is happening to you and you are experiencing this, it's really, really worth your time to sit by yourself and get this worked out. If you don't have some kind of meditation practice and you're a singer, okay, if you're a singer and you're struggling in any way, right? Either, from many different levels, we can struggle on many different levels in this career, right? But if you're a singer and you don't have some kind of consciousness practice, breathing practice, meditation practice, I think you need to get one, because this is really going to help you dig deep inside and find those places where you feel charged emotion, where you feel stress, you feel holding, and you will solve a lot of vocal problems that way. You will realize when you start conquering that fear. And let's not use the word conquer. I've used this word conquer so much. Now I'm like, delete. Let's not use the word conquer. Let's use the word dissipate or dissolve. Let's dissolve the fear, right? How do we dissolve the fear, right? We give it attention. We don't ignore it. The more you ignore it, the more you look away from that fear, the worse it becomes, right? So you have to first face it. You have to look at it. You have to see what it brings about, what tendencies it brings about in you. And only then will you start to realize, as the fear dissolves, that you actually know what the hell you're doing. And even if you're at the beginning of your journey, you'll actually realize that you know a lot more about this, about singing, than you realize, because it's there, right? It's there. But sometimes we block it. So I hope that this kind of helps and causes you to think about something, like it's not always functional. And in my job as a voice teacher, I have to say, there are a lot of times, sometimes there are quick physical fixes that cause great gains. But a lot of times there's a point where I say to myself, I just know in here, I go, oh, this is not a vocal problem. This is a fear problem. And in that moment, there's not really much I can do except be supportive, because the person has to come and face that, right? And face it on a small level. And gradually, right? And gradually can happen in a second, by the way. But gradually means it doesn't happen. You don't push yourself to do it, right? But you come to the realization that, oh, I actually can give this fear a voice, give this fear a face, and then I can recognize that I don't need it and I don't need to serve it. And when you do that for yourself, you are contributing very positively to our whole world, right? You're contributing very positively to your musical circle, and you're contributing positively to the opera world, and you're contributing positively to the entire world, right? To the audiences, to everybody you come into contact with. So yeah, it's something that's not talked about, and our whole world generates fear. Oh, don't do this until you're ready. I mean, imagine how many times you've heard that said to you. Don't sing that aria until you're ready. Oh, don't present yourself to organizations before you're ready, because you will get blacklisted. All of these things. I mean, I don't know about this generation now, but how I was brought up, this was it, right? This was how they taught you. Don't you go out there until you're ready, or you will never work again. This is terrible. This is really terrible. And frankly, it's bullshit. Not true. But this is what kind of propagates this idea, right? And intendants or producers, oh my gosh, we can't put something on stage that's not a sure thing, right? We need to sell tickets. Oh my goodness, like there's so much fear, okay? So if you don't conquer the fear in your part, right? Like here, if you don't conquer this fear, or we're using the word dissolve now because I didn't like the word conquer. If we don't dissolve this fear here, you can't dissolve the fear over there, right? So just some thoughts. And, for each person that's going to look different. Like I said, develop a consciousness practice. That's number one for conquering the fear. If you don't have one, start meditating 15 minutes twice a day. Breathe in and out continuously. No pauses between the inhales and exhales. Do that twice a day, 15 minutes, and you'll notice a difference, right? But take that time because it's very important. And I think our world needs it, and certainly our industry needs it. So I hope to see you all soon. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's something you're struggling with. You can always DM me. All right. And now I'm going to try to stop my live, see how this goes.